Think of a single group anywhere in the world that has risen from poverty to affluence through politics. There are any number of groups that have risen from poverty to affluence through almost every other conceivable means. When I look at the groups that have had spectacular rises, like the Jews or the Chinese, they are almost invariably groups that stayed away from politics. And they usually stayed away until after they became affluent. Some of them could then afford to go into politics. But that was not the mechanism by which they got where they are.
What was the mechanism?
Basically work, skills, savings. I haven't been able to find a single country in the world where the policies that are being advocated for blacks in the United States have lifted any people out of poverty. I've seen many examples around the world of people who began in poverty and ended in affluence. Not one of them has followed any pattern at all like what is being advocated for blacks in the United States. Many groups have remained in poverty for a very long time trying to follow those patterns.
Hey, welcome back. It's your man Wise, and today I have a great video to share with you all. This is Thomas Sowell, why the left only focuses on race. Before we get into the video, please make sure that you like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Drop me a comment down below. I appreciate all the love and support. And without further ado, let's go.
Dr. Sowell, when we talk about equality, immediately race pops into mind. It's always about race, racial discrimination, about the founding of the nation, white dominant society, so forth and so on. And you make the case, and you've made this case throughout your life, but it's very poignant in your book, which is, wait a minute, of course this has some impact, but it's not the only thing that has an impact. But why, first of all, what other things have an impact? It's probably an infinite list of things. And secondly, why do they only focus on race on the left?
I guess it's because that's proven to be a politically popular thing to do. But in point of fact, one of the things that's mentioned in the book is a study that was done by the New York Times, of all people, some years ago, where they tried to show the 10 poorest counties in the United States. And they mentioned which ones they were and so on. It turns out that 6 of those 10 counties had a population that was from 90% to 100% white. Now, in the New York Times, they didn't mention the race of the people, but once they told me the counties, I looked it up. And in fact, I followed the average income in those 6 counties over a span of 50 years. And in all those 50 years, all 6 of those counties had a median income lower than the median income of black Americans. Now, and so the people in those counties faced zero racism because they were white and indistinguishable from all other whites. They didn't have a legacy of slavery, and yet there they were. You have to ask then, clearly, there must be other things that cause poverty. We can't just assume that because people of a given race have more poverty than some other people, that race must be the reason. But this has become the automatic kind of thing, and I think most people would be quite surprised. One of the things that happens is that behavior matters, and you see that in so many different ways. For example, I think most people would be surprised to learn that despite the fact that blacks as a whole have a higher poverty rate than whites as a whole, black married couple families have for more than a quarter of a century, every single year, had a poverty rate under 10%. And in most of those years, the national poverty rate was not as low as 10%. So it's not and you say, well, this is due to institutional racism. In that case, does that mean that the racists make an exception for blacks who are married? I mean, do racists either know or care whether blacks are married? None of these glib explanations stands up to the slightest empirical study.
And let's talk about this when it comes to minorities generally. You have an Asian population in this country that achieves a lot as a group, intellectually, education-wise. And they are discriminated against by these Ivy League colleges, by Harvard. We just had a Supreme Court decision and so forth, the way Jews were 100 years earlier, by Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and so forth. So the people who push this race issue, is it that they really care about black people or Asian people or Jewish people, or is it that it's just another wedge issue to try and destroy this culture and destroy this society?
There are some people who are both. Some really believe it, and I feel sorry for them. But there are some who really don't care. If it gets them elected, that's what matters. And this is one of the tragedies of trying to politicize race. There are so many fallacies that it's hard to even know which one to take up. But for example, the great narrative is that blacks rose from poverty, got into professional occupations as a result of the 1960s social welfare programs, and that this has been a big benefit. One of the problems with this way of looking at things is that everything depends on when you pick as the start of this trend. If you go back to 1940, that is 20 years before these wonderful things are supposed to have happened in the 1960s, and you discover that the degree to which blacks were in poverty declined from 87% in 1940 to 47% in 1960. So it went down by 40 points in those 20 years. Now you look at the 20 years following 1960, they went down 18 points. And so the trend did not begin in the 1960s. The trend was there before then, and the trend did not even accelerate after 1960. Many people think that it would all began with the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Well, that was a fine act to get rid of the segregation laws in the South. But the cold fact is that the percentage of blacks who had professional occupations doubled from 1954 to 1964. That is in the decade ending at the time that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed. If you look at the things that are negative, like, for example, black children being raised in single-parent households. In 1940, just under 17% of black kids were raised in one-parent families. But after the 1960s, before the end of the century, 4 times that many, 68% of black kids were being raised in one-parent families. And that does not depend on racism or any of the other things they talk about. It depends upon things that happened due to the policies of the 1960s, which are still going forward.
Which encourage the dissolution of the family. It's just unbelievable.
Oh, man. Oh, man. Great video, great information. As always, God bless the great Mr. Professor, Dr. Thomas Sowell. At the ripe age of 92, still dropping gems and educating the masses, man. God bless him. The left, they only have fear tactics to sell you. That's it. That's all they have. People are racist or some type of phobic, whether it's transphobic or homophobic or whatever. That's all they have is scare tactics. When you look at the left and how they've decimated the family, especially the black family, the numbers don't lie. They don't. And yes, Mr. Sowell is 100% correct in everything that he said and in his full assessment. If you have not checked out any of the books that he has written, and he's well over, I think if I'm not mistaken, he has well over 20 books that he's written. Before you go in and dive down that rabbit hole, I suggest that you guys check out Controversial Essays. It's a collection of essays that he's written over the years. I believe it's maybe 94 chapters, but it's easily digestible information that you should check out before you dive into one of his longer books that he has. But when you look at the nuclear family, and we look at the lack of nuclear families in the black community, right now, or as per, 2020, I don't know if the numbers may be, far worse than they were back then, but this is the data that I was able to pull up. In the Black community, 64% of children are growing up in single parent households compared to 24% of white children and 42% of Hispanic children. The poverty rates amongst single parent led households or single parent Black households led by mothers is at 31%. It's only at 17% when it's a single father or a single Black man raising his children alone. It's at 17%. We're talking almost half. There's a major difference. When you look at the education, children that grow up in these single parent led households, from an academic standpoint, they have lower academic achievement. They have a higher dropout rate in comparison to their two parent household peers. Tons of behavioral issues. They're suffering from a lot of mental health issues, depression and anxiety and things of that nature. And you look at the health disparities. Black children growing up in single parent households are more likely to face health challenges such as asthma, obesity, and other mental health issues. Incarceration rates are a lot higher in comparison to the dual family households. So when you look at it and then you look at the policies that the left has implemented that has incentivized, single parent led situations, it's been more destructive. It's caused more harm than help. Now, when you look at America in general, obviously single mother led households, regardless of the race, you have a 34% chance of those children growing up in poverty. In comparison to single father led households where you're at 16%. Again, that's actually more than half of a difference. When you look at the, single mother in comparison to single father led households, and that's just in general across the country, regardless of race. We know that there's an increased lower academic achievement and, a higher rate of dropping out of school. And that's across the board, regardless of race. So this situation it's not just the Black community. It transcends race. When you have kids that grow up in single parent households, especially if they're led by women, it's normally not a good situation for those kids. Those kids are at risk. Those are the facts. That's what the data says. And that's from 2020. I'm assuming it's not getting better. It's actually getting worse. As someone that has coached football, I've been around kids. I've coached middle school age football, ages about 10, 11, up to about 13, 14. I've seen these situations. And when I first started to hear about the stats and read the stats, I promise you can almost tell the difference between a kid that has dad in their life in comparison to kids that do not have dad in their life. There is a stark difference as to how the kids carry themselves. Do they look you in the eyes when you're talking to them? How much respect they have, for their coaches and for adults. I mean, I could go down the list, the differences between the two kids. So, Dr. Sowell, he's 100% right, in his assessment. When you go back and you look at the Black community pre the welfare state, we were some of the most married people in the country. You were more likely, think about this, during slavery time, a Black child was more likely to grow up around both of his parents during the time of slavery than he is today, or she is today. And that's sad. I'm one of those kind of people. Obviously, you guys know I'm a conservative. I am hoping that President Trump puts some form of bill, some form of incentive to incentivize people to get married again and have kids and to build strong families. Because without strong families, we don't have strong communities. And without strong communities, we don't have strong cities. And without strong cities, we don't have strong states. And without strong states, we don't have a strong country. That's a lot of the reason why we're watching the demise, the demise of America right before our eyes. And that's because we lack families. And that's not just in the Black community, that's across the country. And it transcends race. You guys may or may not know this, but we lead the world in single mother-led households. We lead the world in out of wedlock births. We lead the world. Now, granted fact, there is a lot to say that is good about America, but we're literally watching the demise and the crumble of America right before our eyes. And a lot of us don't even realize it's happening. You look at the school systems, you look at especially the public school systems, how they're miseducating our teachers. Miseducating our students. You look at the fact that they want to defund the police in some places. You look at, all this DIE stuff where they want to just hire people to check a box, even though they're not really qualified or may not be the best person for the job. That means that the companies are going to suffer. I mean, think about it. And then think about this from the school system. They're checking boxes just on hiring teachers. So we're not even getting the best teachers in our school to educate our students. Like I said, we're watching the demise from the inside out. And a lot of us don't even recognize that it's happening. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like, share, subscribe to the channel. Drop me a comment down below. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. And I want to get a roll call check. Tell me what state you are watching from. I'm looking forward to it. I know there's people all across the country. There's people across the world watching what we're doing over here. And I appreciate the love. I really do. I appreciate the support. All of the people that are watching all across the country, all the people that are supporting, commenting, liking, sharing all across the world, out in Australia, New Zealand, in the UK. I appreciate the love, man. I really do. Keep God first in your life, America first. And I'm going to catch up with you all next time. Peace.